The Silent Glacier. The Disappearance of Duncan MacPherson. In August 1989, Duncan MacPherson, a 23-year-old Canadian hockey player with a bright future, embarked on what should have been an exhilarating journey through Europe. He planned to explore the world before settling into a new role as a hockey coach in the United States. But his trip took a sinister turn when he disappeared near the Stubai Glacier in Austria, leaving behind a trail of fragmented clues that baffled his family and investigators for decades. The Glacier and the Red Opal. On August 9th, Duncan arrived at the Stubai Glacier Resort, a popular destination for skiers and snowboarders. He had never snowboarded before, so he visited the resort's rental shop to gear up. Witnesses later confirmed he rented a snowboard and boots and chatted with staff about safety tips for beginners. Duncan was last seen boarding the chairlift, his red snowboard tucked under his arm. He wore bright, unmistakable clothing, a yellow jacket and purple pants, making him easy to spot on the glacier's stark white expanse. Later that evening, Duncan failed to return to his hostel. His red Opel Kadett, a rental car he'd been using to travel through Austria, remained parked neatly in the resort's lot. When staff noticed the vehicle had not moved by the following morning, they didn't raise an alarm. It sat there for days, untouched, as the first threads of the mystery began to unravel. An ominous silence. When Duncan missed his flight back to Canada on August 11th, his parents, Linda and Bob MacPherson, knew something was terribly wrong. They contacted the Austrian authorities, who initially dismissed their concerns. Perhaps Duncan had extended his trip without notifying anyone, they suggested, or perhaps he had met friends elsewhere. But Linda and Bob refused to accept these casual explanations. Duncan was responsible and deeply family-oriented. He had been in regular contact with them throughout his trip, sending postcards and calling whenever he could. The silence was deafening. The family flew to Austria to demand action. Search efforts began, but the glacier, vast, treacherous, and riddled with crevasses, yielded no answers. Helicopters, search dogs, and teams of rescuers scoured the area, focusing on the path from the chairlift to the slopes where Duncan would likely have gone. No trace of him was found. The rental shop's unsettling role. As the search continued, the MacPhersons dug deeper into the events leading up to their son's disappearance. They revisited the rental shop where Duncan had picked up his gear, and the details they uncovered were troubling. The shop staff remembered Duncan clearly. He had been excited but cautious, asking for advice on how to navigate the slopes. However, the records of his rental transaction seemed oddly incomplete. The shop claimed they had taken his identification and a deposit, but no clear documentation of the transaction remained. More disturbingly, the shop owner was evasive when questioned about whether Duncan had returned his equipment. Initially, he claimed the snowboard and boots had been returned to the shop. Later, he contradicted himself, suggesting they were still missing. This inconsistency fueled suspicions that someone at the resort might know more than they were letting on. Theories begin to swirl. With no body, no belongings, and no clear answers from the rental shop, the mystery deepened. At first, authorities leaned toward the simplest explanation. Duncan had suffered an accident on the glacier, falling into a hidden crevasse, or being buried by an avalanche. The glacier's dangers were well documented, and for an inexperienced snowboarder, even a minor mistake could prove fatal. However, as days turned into weeks, the lack of any trace of Duncan cast doubt on this theory. Crevasse rescues typically yielded some evidence: shredded clothing, pieces of gear, or signs of a struggle, but none were found. Suspicion began to fall on the resort itself. Could Duncan have fallen victim to negligence? Some suggested that the chairlift operators or rental shop staff might have known more about his fate, but chose to cover it up. Accidents at high-profile tourist destinations often led to lawsuits and bad publicity, and the resort had a strong incentive to keep any incidents quiet. A chilling discovery. For 14 years, Duncan's family searched tirelessly for answers, hiring private investigators and refusing to give up hope. Then, in 2003, the Glacier finally gave up its secret. During routine maintenance near a ski lift, workers discovered a body encased in ice. The bright clothing and red snowboard left no doubt. It was Duncan MacPherson. The body was remarkably well preserved, frozen in a timeless tomb. An autopsy revealed that Duncan had suffered a severe head injury, likely caused by a fall. The official conclusion was that he had lost control while snowboarding and fallen into a crevasse. But the location of his body raised unsettling questions. Duncan was found near a ski lift track, an area that had been searched extensively in the days following his disappearance. How had search teams missed him? Had his body been moved, or had the glacier's shifting ice somehow hidden him for years? The lingering questions. The discovery of Duncan's body provided some closure, but left many questions unanswered. His family was particularly troubled by the resort's conduct. Why had the rental shop been so inconsistent in its account of Duncan's visit? Why had the search been so poorly coordinated? And why had authorities been so quick to dismiss their concerns? Some suspected that Duncan's body had been discovered years earlier, but concealed to avoid liability. Others wondered if an unreported avalanche had swept him away, with the resort fearing that acknowledging the incident would lead to legal repercussions. The red Opel Kadett, the evasive rental shop, and the peculiar gaps in the resort's records all suggested that the full truth of Duncan's disappearance might never be known. A haunting legacy. For Linda and Bob MacPherson, the discovery of their son's body was bittersweet. They had found him, but the circumstances of his death remained shrouded in mystery. They became advocates for travelers' rights, urging better safety measures and greater accountability in international investigations. Duncan's story remains a haunting enigma, a tale of icy silence and unanswered questions. As the glaciers continue to melt, exposing the secrets of the past, one can only wonder what other truths might one day emerge from the frozen shadows.